Hi there, I'm Silver Johnson, and welcome to Story Jam. We're here today with George Gruhn and Paul Worley, and this is segment 2 of Generosity Jam, which is generously sponsored by Giving Tuesday. We're going to talk today about Paul's generosity origin stories, and I think one of the most interesting ones is your original meeting with George.
Yep.
And it's very significant that you're holding a Martin guitar today. So you want to tell us that little generosity origin story?
Sure. I since I'm here in the room full of guitars, I thought it appropriate to restage the event. It involved an old Martin like this. I was a young college student, a musician, aspiring young man, and back then you struggled to find good instruments to play, much less afford them. But I started hearing the acoustic music of the time of the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Neil Young, the stuff that most, I guess, coming out of California, and then Doc Watson and the bluegrass movement, and a common element was this thing called a Martin guitar, and so I set about on a journey to go find a Martin guitar, and asked around, and I'd heard of this man named George Gruhn that specialized in old instruments, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna see if I can find him. I was at Vanderbilt, and he was about 20 blocks downtown.
Yeah.
So it didn't take long, but I drove down there and walked into the store, and I saw this man standing, leaning on his counter, and behind the counter were guitars hanging on the wall. So I walked in, and I said, and he said, "Can I help you?" And I said, yeah, I kind of stammered and stuttered like I still do. And I said, I'm looking for a Martin guitar. Do you have any Martin guitars? What a dumb question. And George looked at me and said, well, yes, and he said, in fact, there's one right behind me on the wall there. And I looked down, it was down on the wall, and it was this impossibly weathered, played and weathered, scarred dreadnought.
So more so than that?
Way more than this guitar.
This
would have
looked brand new.
I mean, it was really, and so it was remarkable in that. And I looked at George and I said, "Can I pick it up?" And he said, "Sure. Go get it." And I went and picked it up, and I didn't really even know how to hold it, but it had this massive neck and this wide ebony fretboard that was just incredible. And I strummed it, and it was godlike. I mean, the bass string, in my ear rung like the low note of a piano. It just it was a really great sounding guitar. And I think I stuttered and stammered and asked George, well, how much is this? And George said, it's $650 with case. And I said, and so I'm thinking to myself, $650 in 1970 or 71 to a college kid was, might as well have been
$65,000. Yeah.
So I thought, and I played it some more, and I realized I had to have it. So I said, well, will you hold this for me, and I can come and bring you money until it's paid off. Would you do that? And he said, well, do you have a job? And I said, well, yeah, I do. And I did. I was working at another guitar store not far away. And
what were you doing at that guitar store?
I was sweeping floors in the morning, cleaning the windows, and teaching guitar lessons and selling
everything.
Yeah, just anything. And George said, well, take the guitar with you, why don't you? And just bring me $25 a week. Deal was done.
And generosity changed your life.
Yeah, it did. It changed. I see it in my life. As you know, that scene I just described is one that's is visual. So it was validation. It was validation of me as a musician. It was validation of me as a person, having been assessed by a stranger to be worthy of trust, and all those things that happen in an exchange like that. It changes your life in ways that go, well, how many years
Beyond
later?
that day, yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah.
So,
And George, you didn't just trust anybody coming in off the street.
But obviously, Paul remembers that scene better than I do.
yes.
But I can say that I was not one to just trust every person who came through the door. I had graduated from the University of Chicago with a degree in psychology, primarily centered on animal behavior studies, but still it was a degree in psychology.
We're animals.
And we didn't study only animal behavior in order to get a degree.
Right.
And there was something about Paul that said I should trust him. He's worthy. And I've always had an attitude that I am somehow running an adoption agency for instruments. And if you have an instrument like that one that doesn't look like it's been treated with tender, loving care all the years, but has survived, and that we had set it up in good playing order where it was structurally stable, played great, and was something that could actually have soul and personality, and would even change somebody's trajectory of their career, literally change their life, to have the right musical partner. Because a good instrument feels alive, has soul and personality, and it becomes a musical partner. And for some people at the critical stage, if they can get the right instrument, it can literally change their life and change the whole trajectory, direction of their career. And I felt somehow that that guitar and Paul seemed to want to be partners. And when something like that happens, I try to make it work.
Well, that was
Then and still.
it was an act of generosity, but you didn't stop and say, oh, I think I'm going to be generous. You just felt like the relationship between the guitar and Paul was going to be.
Yeah, I felt it was important. On the other hand, I didn't reduce the price.
No.
I
didn't ask you to.
No,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah. When you're in, I just believe that in moments like this, as we have moved forward in our lives, when you have the opportunity to practice generosity and trust, and those aspects of human exchange, it's a blessing, and it's a blessing to the giver and the receiver, and it's just a great way to try and live your life, and it truly did change my life. Because I started playing the coffee houses around town, like the Exit Inn and Frank's and Stein's and just different places, and I put together acoustic bands, and I was received as a player like I'd never been received before, with that guitar in my hand, because of how it sounded. People would seek me out in this day and age before cell phones or any kind of communication like that. They would come knocking on my door. They'd have to find out where I lived. And they would knock on the door to come visit the guitar. And it happened numerous times. So
there was an anthropomorphic quality to the guitar and to all of George's adopted children. And so he was, with his act of generosity and trust, he was creating an opportunity for a relationship and also supporting maybe your next act of generosity.
Oh, absolutely. To think about it, the notion that old guitars, the old ones, the played ones, the beaten down ones, had value I would have been more likely to just go buy a new guitar at that time in the world. I mean, it just wasn't really understood by people like me.
And you worked at a guitar store.
Yeah, and you'd buy a used guitar because it was cheaper than buying a new one. But, so I think about Nashville and the Nashville music scene and the change in the tones and sound and abilities of the players in this town that you can attribute to what he was doing as a pioneer in that field. And all the guitars like that exchanged hands that ended up in the laps of people like me, it really changed my playing.
Well, it's like Be the People and Giving Tuesday say generosity is a multiplier.
Yeah.
And it's like fractals. It's like Fibonacci. They just keep opening and building on themselves. And we pass it around and we build on it. And we use kindness as a commodity, but we don't measure it. We just treasure it.
Yeah.
And if we do that and practice that, in our everyday lives, whether it's a guitar or opening the door for someone or, George opening the door proverbially for you, for what you
I walked into another world.
You walked into another world just through an act of generosity.